our special town meeting greetings to either of the constables of the town of Ashfield and the county of Franklin. Greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town qualified to vote in elections and in town affairs to meet at the Ashfield Town Hall in said Ashfield on Wednesday the 13th of March 2013 at 7 o'clock in the evening, then and there to act on the following articles. Signed, given this day under our hands, the 25th day of February in the year of our Lord 2013, signed by Thomas Carter, Paulette Luker, a true copy attested by our Constable Elizabeth LeSure, and signed by Ron Kohler. Pursuant to the within warrant, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Ashfield by posting up attested copies of the same at the Ashfield Town Hall and the Ashfield Post Office, posted by Constable Elizabeth LeSure on the 26th of February 2013, 15 days before the date of the meeting, as within directed. And I would like to open the floor for nominations for temporary moderator. And I'm asking for a nomination, please.
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
I nominate Phil Pless as temporary moderator.
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. And I'm going to, reading from my script, this is my first time doing this, but it sounds like that's what I'm doing. I just want to make sure that we get it right and do the voting correctly. Any more nominations?
I move they close.
And a second?
Second.
And we need to take a vote on the motion to close the nominations, and I will declare the result.
I'll move the question.
Second.
Right. And as town clerk, I need to obtain a motion to cast one ballot as town clerk to nominate Phil Pless to be our temporary moderator, and I will do that figuratively speaking, and I'll write it in our minutes when I certify the vote today.
So moved.
Thank you. And now I declare that Phil Pless is elected as our temporary moderator, and I will swear Phil in.
I have a script too. Where do you want to go?
Do you want to sit down or do you want to stand?
I'll stand. I don't want my back all.
So you can be wherever you want. You want to move forward?
You're the boss.
Yeah.
I'll go over here. I'll be the boss.
Yes.
Do we need this?
Yes.
There's nobody downstairs who's recording?
Yes, it is.
It helps. Okay. Keeps going back to Facebook. And then turns upside down. Good evening, everyone. I call the special town meeting to order. I'd like to identify the people at the front table. Starting all the way on the left, Municipal Town Clerk Ann Dunn, Administrative Assistant Mary Fitzgibbon, Select Board Paulette Lukehart, Tom Carter, Ron Kohler. For the Finance Committee tonight, we have John Rogers, Ted Murray, and David Newell. David, thanks for stepping in to got me out of that one too, thanks. Mrs. Dunn, would you please tell us who our tellers will be this evening?
If we need tellers, we have many people who are already appointed and have taken their oath, and I've asked Muriel to help, and also I will ask Sandy Lilly to help, and Nancy Garvin, and Yuri, if needed, if we need to use a paper ballot.
Okay, thank you for your service. Are there any non-voters here tonight? Okay. I think I can remember that, so I don't need you to move. Okay, because most of you are over there. And you. Okay. Thanks for coming. than TV. You non-voters, you are permitted to attend based upon your agreement to the following two conditions. That if you wish to speak on an issue, you must identify yourself as a non-resident and obtain permission from the meeting to address it. And that you will not vote on any issue presented at the meeting. You're welcome to talk, you can't vote. Are there any non-residents who do not agree to these conditions? Thank you. I remind voters of the bylaw prohibiting anyone from speaking more than twice on an issue without permission from the meeting. I also remind you that you must stand to speak, state your name and address your comments to the chair. I will enlarge the amount of time afforded to the Select Board and Finance Committee to speak to a specific article. Everybody else has 2 minutes. At this time, I ask Clerk Dunn to read the return of the warrant from the Constable. Instead of reading the individual articles to the meeting at this time, we will do so as each comes up for consideration. You did the return of the warrant?
I did the return.
You did all that?
Yes.
Okay. That's the one I want. Article 1. To see if the town will vote to transfer up to $5,000 from free cash to legal expense or act relative thereto. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mr. Carter.
I move that the town vote to transfer $5,000 from free cash to legal expense.
Is there a second?
Second.
And who from the select board would like to speak to this?
I'd be glad to. At annual town meeting last year, we voted $15,000 for legal expense. At that time, we knew that $10,000 of that was going to be used to pay a deductible on some of the legal issues from 2 and 3, 4 years ago. So that left a $5,000 balance for actual town council legal expense. At this time, we have a balance of $390 left in that account. We have bills, invoices from town council to the tune of roughly $1,100 that haven't been paid. So this $5,000 that we're talking about tonight is to have enough money to pay those outstanding invoices and also give us money to get through the end of the year. Legal expense this year, a majority of it, and I have my notes. Roughly $3,490 has been expended out of that $5,000 for a flush of open meeting law and requests for public information requests that we have to refer to town council to get the proper response and get their opinions on what needs to be and what should be included in those. That $3,490 was to our regular town council, which is McNichol and Toombs in Greenfield. There was an additional invoice from Koppelman and Page about an open meeting law violation or accusation. And that single invoice, to give you an idea of how expensive this is, that one was $577.50. So it only takes a few of those to, after a while, add up to quite a bit of money. So out of this $5,000, we're going to use roughly $800 of it to try to get caught up on the invoices that we currently have on to be paid. It's going to leave us roughly $4,000 to try to get through the end of the year. At this point, I would say I'm pretty sure it's 9 at this point, open meeting law open meeting law violations that have accusations that have been answered or are in the process of being answered.
Meeting law violation complaints formally
Right.
filed with the attorney.
The complaints.
The board's initiative.
And those are ongoing. So that's enough information, I think, to at least get the discussion started on this, and we can always come back to more specifics.
Okay, Finance Committee.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
the Finance Committee unanimously recommends in favor of this article.
Discussion. Mr. Perlman.
Bill Perlman, 40 Suburban Drive. It's my understanding that the vast majority of these have been lodged against the town by a small number of people. I'd just like to make clear to everybody that it is not only the town of Ashfield and the Select Board that have been suffering under this onslaught, but also the Franklin County Housing Administration, who is spending over $20,000 last year in defending against these, and the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, its building inspection program and health programs, are also spending an extreme amount of time and money on this. I don't mind spending money, which I think for things that are needed and are good for the town. What I have been unable to determine about these is what the aim is, what the goal of all of these complaints and document requests are. And so I'm going to ask Paulette Lucart to address that, since she is one of the people that has been filing at least document requests, etc., to the Council of Governments, and seems to be part of this group of people that have been attacking these organizations.
Okay. Ms. Lucart, you want to respond? Okay. Mr. Grant.
Cranston, 326 Suburban Drive. Is there any way to put an end to these frivolous accusations that we keep giving to the town?
Who are you asking?
Pardon?
Who are you asking?
Whomever's.
Okay. You're looking at me.
Phil, I didn't hear the question.
The question was, how do we put an end to this? To paraphrase.
Ron Kohler, Bailey Road, select person. First time here, so forgive me if everything doesn't come out the way it's supposed to. There have been a number of accusations. We have 3 reminders on them. These are complaints can be filed by basically anyone in the town, I would not do it justice just to speak off the top of my head. I'll give you general categories. Some of the categories relate to the timely submission of minutes. Some of the complaints refer to agendas not being properly formatted, agendas that are either select board or health board. Some of them are about protocols going into executive session. It's a very interpretive sort of situation that probably, as lay people, we do the best we can. We think we're going to talk about a subject, and we speak about the subject. We try to stay within the confines of the agenda, for example. And a certain amount of latitude is usually afforded to stray a little bit. And that little bit, that shade of gray, is what disturbs people. And I would suggest that if you want to know more about it, probably the best thing to do is gain access through the executive assistant here, Mary, and look through them because they all have signatures on them, and try to understand what those complaints are. Complaints, you can also go to the attorney, the AGO's office, and in the AGO's office they have the complaints formally listed, and they will say whether it was a violation or not a violation, or delivered. So it's a very bureaucratic process that starts out with a complaint. The board that's being accused is given a chance to remediate to that individual. They usually send out a letter within a certain amount of time. It takes manpower to do that, woman power. And then a letter is filed from the AGO's office saying, if we don't hear from you, the person who filed the complaint, in the next 30 days, we'll assume you're satisfied. It doesn't mean that they're satisfied if they fire a letter off saying we're still not satisfied. And this churning is what takes time, and a lot of correspondence back and forth from the various boards, the administrative assistant, executive administrator, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of bureaucracy tied up in these alleged complaints, violations.
Mr. Murray?
Ted Murray, 111 Strawbecker Road. In light of the seemingly long process of back and forth, has there been any determination yet found by the Attorney General's office about any of these recent complaints as to whether they are adjudicated to be legitimate, or have they been kind of denied by the AGO? Do we have any information about what the track record
Who would
is?
like to answer that?
Yes,
Who would answer that?
You can answer to them. They have responded to one.
They
They've made one determination, and it's on the website.
Did everybody hear that?
No.
What is it? They have responded to one open meeting law complaint that was filed against the Board of Health, dated back in March of 2012. Like you said, it's a long process, and it is out on their website. If you Google it and look up Ashfield, you can read it. They cite the whole.
What was the bottom line?
It was mixed, in that part of it they say it's fine, part of it they said against the town and what the action would be taken.
So
That's how they do
all this is available on mass.gov? You work your way to Attorney General?
Or the Ashfield website.
No, it's at the AG's site for open meeting law determinations.
But that can be found through mass.gov?
Yeah. The interesting part is every town's open meeting law complaints are out there. That's the only one that's been responded to for Ashfield, but you can go read those same types of documents for other towns, and in some cases it's very informative, and you can learn from somebody else's experience whether they were okay or whether the AG told them how to fix the situation.
I see your hands go up, and I've got my list here, and I write faster than I can type, so cheers to the
Hi, Trixie Short, Sears Road, Ashfield. So it sounds like there's been a number of complaints. It sounds like there's been a response to one. I'm just wondering whether or not we could incur additional costs if there are fines or other kinds of things. Is there anything else that we have to take into consideration? Have the complaints stopped, or are they still coming at a regular pace?
Who would like to answer that?
Mr. Parker? I mean, you really, it's a terrible answer to lead off with, but you really don't know. I mean, a lot of these complaints are, technicalities, and maybe there's something to correct, and maybe there's nothing to correct. And I think that's why it takes so long for the Attorney General to try to come up with a response. I mean, it's difficult to make something out of nothing, so it takes a long time to figure out how you're going to write that. That's my interpretation. I think possibly if somebody was just out there running rogue and trying to do a bad job in their position, that sure, there could be a penalty of some sort. But the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health have been taking the brunt of this. So you've got people in these volunteer positions that are doing the best they can to keep themselves between the mustard and the mayonnaise, but still get the business of the town done. And this whole idea, I get a little vested in this because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to me that in a town of 1,800 people that we have to send these documents and go to the Attorney General first. You know, a whole community of neighbors. We don't have to agree on everything. There's a lot of people in this town that haven't agreed with me. They've spanked me on the town meeting floor more than once, but you know what? I'll have coffee and go to lunch with you across the street anytime. But the first attack is to file a complaint or an accusation and cost the town money. A little bit of latitude to talk about other articles at the same time. I mean, we're trying to replenish what we originally thought in this article that we're discussing right now. We're just trying to replenish what we originally thought would be the legal consultations the town would normally need. The assessors use town council. The tax collector in collections uses town council. There could be an occasion where the planning board or the Board of Appeals would use town council. Other boards in town would use town council. As chairman, I have authority that, you know, somebody calls me, says, I got an issue with town council, can I use it? We can do that. So we spent a huge amount of money. I mean, 70%, almost 80% of what we originally planned a year ago to use in this year, we spent on this, that when I was sitting on that table last year, we had no idea this was going to go on. The reason I'm asking for latitude to talk about the next article from the moderator is, the next article is going to ask for $7,000 additional to go into legal expense just this $7,000 is really year tag to use for these complaints. We have no idea if they're going to stop, when they're going to stop, or how they're going to end. But we do know that by law, when we get them, there's a timetable, the clock starts ticking, they need to be answered, and with these legal type situations, it would be foolish for any official not to consult with town council. The third article that we're going to talk about today is special staffing. That's an additional $3,000. I personally think that's woefully low. Okay? And what this is the administrative assistant, the other town hall staff that ends up spending their time on these complaints and the information requests and so forth are not able to even touch during that time. I mean, that time is being paid for from, when we allocated that money, it was to do the regular day-to-day business of the town. And this is such a workload on top of that that the day-to-day business of the town doesn't get done. And those dollars equate to hours, and there's only so many hours we can pay for. That $3,000 is to try to get us through the rest of the year when they're working on these, that they can work some extra hours to actually do their job. I mean, right now, Mary, there's a tremendous load on her position at the number of hours that she's supposed to work to try to help the select board and the finance committee coordinate everything so we can put together this $4 million budget, right, that we have to talk about on the first Saturday of May. But if we have her digging up documents and trying to figure out what needs to be sent out, she can't do that. So that's the other $3,000. At this time of year, this is when we're trying to put the budget together and taking this out of free cash, we're well aware that these are, once we spend it on this sort of stuff, we can't spend it on other things like the park and the schools and all the other things in town that demand our resources. So I covered that.
Can I just get a question about these?
Can we go back?
Susan Clark, Clark Road. I'm a member of the Board of Health, and I just want to give a little perspective on the open meeting law violations. Mary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think between the Select Board and the Board of Health, we've had 11 open meeting law violations filed in the last 12 months.
And possibly 12.
Okay.
They're some still in process.
Of those, I think we've only had a finding on one, and that was the Board of Health open meeting law violation allegation. That particular, actually there were 3 allegations regarding one meeting that we had, 3 separate ones from 3 different individuals, one of which was not even, one person was not even present at the meeting in question. And I would like to take a little bit of issue with Paulette's characterization of that finding, that it was mixed. We were found not to have violated the open meeting law. The AG's office did recommend that we review the open meeting law guide and that we change some wording in our minutes. But they did find that we did not violate the open meeting law. And I think this has just put a real burden on the Board of Health because we are not able to do health-related business, and we need to move on from this. So that's just what I wanted to say about that.
Thank you. Bill Perlman.
You mentioned a bill coming from Koppelman and Page. My understanding that when somebody gets permission to use town council, that it's McNichol and Toombs that the permission is given for, and that was my understanding when I voted for the legal budget. So it's the way it's been. Can I ask who authorized the use of Koppelman and Page, who charge a significantly amount more money than McNichol and Toombs?
It was before my time, so I'll defer to my colleagues.
Either one.
At that time. It would have been Doug Field at that time.
Doug Field, 64 Bowman Road. Yes, I gave permission for Koppelman Page.
Okay.
May I ask why?
We felt we needed a second opinion.
Sandy?
I was going to address, that same issue. Thank you.
Tirsa?
I appreciate all the information. I would say that this is a pretty serious crisis for the town, and I'm in support of passing this so that we can have the funds that we need.
We're talking about complaints that have been raised by people.
Who are you?
I'm sorry, I'm Don Robinson on Norton Hill Road. We're talking about complaints that have been raised by people against the conduct of business by officers of the town. I am sure that people who raised those complaints thought they were not frivolous at all, thought they were serious. And we need, I think, as neighbors to recognize that, to show some respect for a neighbor who is raising these complaints. Now, the people that are at the tables here and the Board of Health have deemed those complaints excessive, if not frivolous. And so there is a conflict here between the two views. And what I take it from various answers that we have no discretion about whether we're going to respond to those complaints. If papers are demanded, we've got to dig until we find those papers. We're not free to say this is frivolous. And so we're in a dilemma here between people who are raising complaints that they think are serious versus members of the boards that think that and the staff time and so on, all these other factors on the other side. I think that there's a defect here in the law, namely that there should be some way to appeal this question of whether these complaints are worth adjudicating any further or pursuing any further. Whether they are repetitive, can they be bunched in any way, and so on. I take it there is no such authority in existence now. We can't let just the select board decide it doesn't want to answer these things, because that is, that would violate principles that we're all committed to in terms of the equality of members of town meeting. But we need to put in place something which is going to figure out how to organize this this dispute and get it resolved, get the complaints put together and placed and combed through.
Two things. One, Susan, if I misread that conclusion from that AG that's out on the website, I apologize.
Thank you.
And as far as the open meeting law complaint, when it first comes to the board that the complaint is being addressed to, if the board honestly thought it made a mistake, made the error, it's within the board's effort to define and say, okay, we made the mistake, we know what the remedy is, we know what not to do in the future, and that's the reply that goes back to the person who made the complaint. At that point, you would think that the person probably isn't going to then say, I disagree. If the board that the complaint is against says, no, we didn't do anything wrong, one can almost expect the person who made the complaint to say, I disagree. Then it goes to the Attorney General, who then decides whether they're going to investigate. So, in some cases, the complaints that have come in, and if we have determined on the different boards that we can do things differently, then one would think we weren't going to make the same mistake a second time if we believe we made a mistake.
Anybody else? Okay.
Just a few points of clarification. There are two different things that take up this time. The request for public information, which falls under the Secretary of State over here. Then you have the open meeting law complaints and potential violations, which are under the AGO's office over there. And they don't really talk to each other that much. So we have been, I don't know if hammered is the right word, but I'll use it. We've been really hammered with a lot of requests for public information. And Don, I take a little exception with what you say. No one said it was frivolous. It's the consumer's right to do this. But I, as an individual, did go to the Open Meeting Law Complaint Advisory Committee meeting in downtown Boston. And I said, how do you deal with this sort of thing? This town is paying the bill. And it's a very difficult situation that we're in. And there were people there from Mass Municipal Association and so on and so forth. And people said, that's it. It's an act of legislation. The consumer or the resident, citizen, is protected. They have it within their rights to request this public information. It could be thousands of pages. And you have a time clock that you have to respond. At one point you had said something like, if you choose to respond, we have to respond. We are personally liable. There's some recent legislation that says that the AG's office can actually individually charge you, and I don't know where the town would stand on that sort of situation. The last thing I would say is there have been a few reports in the Greenfield Recorder that have said by other people, by citizens in the towns, suggesting education. I'll tell you, the volunteers in this town, I've seen them at seminars all over the state. And at one that I can recall clearly in a nearby town, we had probably 3/4 of the probably 30 participants in that educational seminar. And these seminars were on open meeting law and so on and so forth, public information requests, executive sessions, all that sort of stuff. So the volunteers are really being pushed hard to educate themselves because they live in fear of just stepping a little off the sideline and having to deal with the onerous amount of work to deal with this whole thing. So I just wanted to add that.
Cameron Lilly, 1144 Watson Spruce Corner. Got a couple questions. I just see this is basically adding up to about 15,000, 16,000 that's coming out of free cash. How much free cash do we have left?
Right now we've got our new certification. We have within a few dollars of $342,000 in free cash that's available. But as a former member of the Finance Committee, you know that quite often that's used to fund the next year's budget. And that's what we're working on now. $342,000 sounds like a lot of money, but one of the big things that we've been talking about is Hurricane Irene. We have a $205,000 unfunded liability that we're not sure if the mass emergency deal, that MEMA is gonna come up with any money. They haven't given us an answer on that really yet, so we don't know how much of that we need to pay. It could be the 205, it could be 102, but we need, you know, that shrinks, that eats up. Like I said, we can only spend $1 once. It's an unfortunate, it's a...
Okay, in response to that, why are we here?
Why are we here?
To transfer,
We're transferring money because we have, under the law, responsibility when all these complaints and so forth come in, the town has to act on it.
and we're looking to be voted on here. What happens if it's voted down?
It would,
Yeah, I'm just throwing that out.
it would paint a picture that probably Picasso never even thought of.
Well, that's
It would be kind of an ugly situation.
But maybe it ought to be poked at to show some of these people. Also, if people are asking for information and questioning open law, a lot of corporation stuff, you gotta come up with $500 to put down. If you're right, you get it refunded. If you're not right, you lost your $500. That's something that could be done in the town.
I think our new state representative is from Worthington. That's who you'd have to talk to about that, Johanna.
Johanna Anderson, Pratt Holly Road. I'm just getting up to speed on this, but are the individuals who have filed these complaints identities protected for some reason? Okay, so if there are probably some of them here. I'd like to know who they are, not for any adversarial reason, but just because in the nature of openness and neighborliness and all the things that Tom spoke to, why can't we hear from them in a forum like this first, before it's taken to the state level? So can we hear who these people are, and if I see them on the street, I can have a dialogue with them? Please?
Are you going to answer that? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, instead of these people, these disgruntled group, when reading the paper tonight, there's 4 people. And I'm not trying to persecute these people, but they need to step forward and tell us who they are so we can hear from them in a forum like this first. So could I please, either, if you have the complaints, I'll read their names, because I'd like to know who they are, because if they're the elephant in the room, and they're in the room. And we'd like to hear from them, and if you're here tonight, could we hear from you, please? Whoever you are, I have no idea who it is.
Yeah, it's, you know, it is absolutely public information. And I hear quite often that, you know, the complaints are filed and the info, because we want transparent government. And,
yes.
And transparency is a window, not a mirror.
And it goes both ways.
That's right. So Suzanne Corbett.
Yeah.
A woman by the name of Deb Nicholson, who resides at the Ashfield house. Cheryl Jordan, and those are the 3 big ones. Those are the 3. And
so we're only talking about 3 people in town.
I cannot think of a 4th.
Well, there's a question about Paulette.
Paulette, are you?
I did not file an open meeting law complaint against the select board.
But is this part of the reason you get up in the morning to talk to these people and worry about this kind of thing? I mean,
I think that's out of the scope.
Okay, but I think that let's hear from these people before we hear from them.
My understanding is they're not here tonight.
None of those people are here tonight. I don't know who they are. Okay.
Brian Clark, Clark Road, Apple Valley part of town. Given all the interest in these complaints and requests and the interest of better transparency here, I'd like to suggest to the board that they authorize putting the complaint documents and the information request documents and maybe related responses to those, making them available on the town website so people can go and look at them, see them for themselves. In that regard, I've talked to the technology committee about this, and they're willing to do the work necessary to accomplish that so that it can be done without any expense to the town.
That was a beautiful segue into some something that's had me concerned for some time, and it has been discussed at the board, is that there are plenty of minutes, and not necessarily all, but many documents that are part of the minutes that could also be put up on the web, in which case many people could self-serve the same kind of information that they are now having to write up and request people to make copies of them for in town hall, pay for the copies, and then pick up paper. So, absolutely, putting stuff on the web lets some people, not everybody in town, as we know, but that would go a long way to helping have less requests for public information. Some, not necessarily all, because some people may still want it.
Donna Sarah, Sears Road. I think that we've discussed this quite a bit, and I think that we all have opinions one way or the other about these complaints, but I think maybe we should get back to the article, is basically to give you the $5,000 a month. So I'm just putting that out there at this point. So I guess, am I moving the question? Is that what I'm supposed to do?
I never asked that question, but...
Okay, so I'd like to move the question.
Okay, she has asked to move the question. That means we have no further discussion if 2/3 of the people vote for
I'll
that.
second it. You need a second.
Correct?
Yeah, you need a second.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor of cutting off discussion and going to a vote, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay. That is definitely 2/3. So, all in favor to see if the town will vote to transfer up to $5,000 from free cash to legal expense. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. It's needed a majority vote. All the articles tonight are majority vote. Okay? Okay? Good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, Article 2. To see if the town will vote to transfer up to $7,000 from free cash to an account to be established as legal expense or act relative thereto. Is there a motion? Mr. Harder.
Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to transfer $7,000 from free cash to legal expense, to the legal expense line.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is the second part that I already discussed, is that we replenish that so we have money for everybody else that does regular business in the town. From here forward, this $7,000 is really earmarked so we can segregate when the bills come in that have to do with these open meeting law violations and requests for information. So it supplements that legal expense to that end to take care of those.
Okay. Finance Committee.
Mr. Moderator, Finance Committee unanimously recommends that the town appropriate this fund. You will note that there was a change in what Mr. Carter moved versus what was on the original warrant. That would have brought the $7,000 into a segregated, separate second legal expense fund. Last night, the board and FinCon both voted unanimously to keep a single fund together, and consequently, we support the motion that Mr. Carter made.
Discussion. Mr. Perlman. Name and address.
We're
Name and address.
coming up with more money
Name
now.
and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill Perlman, still at 40 Suburban Drive.
Trying to be soft.
As far as I know. We're now at $12,000 and climbing in terms of these motions, and I have to say that I support this. It's important that we respond to each and every one of these. It's required, but it's also important. And again, I point out that we are not the only agency that's being bombarded with some of these. And as harmful it is to the town, to spend money that could easily be spent on roads or education to the library on legal fees. We're also, these people are also alienating two organizations who have the responsibility of handing out a tremendous amount of grant money to towns. I'm on the executive committee of one of them, and I can tell you that they are really gun shy of doing any business with Ashfield, because it seems that in a couple of instances, especially the one with the Board of Health where they attempted to help, they have ended up spending a tremendous amount of money. Ashfield has not received the money that it was supposed to have gotten, and I wouldn't be able to tell you that there may be grant money in the future that we will not get because we are too difficult to deal with. So it's important that we that everybody knows that, and that's the kind of harm that's being done over and above the money that's being spent.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ready to vote?
Carol Liebold, John Ford Road. So I just have a brief question. So if we found a different solution to addressing some of this, like going online, making, I just want to clarify, we can vote for this money, we'd throw it back into free cash if we actually found a different solution to this, correct? Okay. Yes, I'm saying.
That was an affirmative?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we're throwing money in anticipation, but doesn't mean we have to spend it.
That is correct.
Okay.
That we're putting up to the $7,000 into this legal fund, over and beyond the $5,000 we just authorized. If there is, you don't have to spend that money. At the end of the year, the fiscal year, there's money left in that account. It goes back into the general fund in cash. So we're not obligated to spend this money. We're making provision for the possibility we'll need to.
Moderator.
Mr. Hartman.
I'm not sure, when we put this together, I'm not sure that $7,000 is the right number. It may be a little high. It could end up, a whirlwind of activity and be short. I certainly hope not. We've only got 4 or 5 months till the end of the fiscal year. But to think, this is my humble opinion, is that to think that putting everything on the web so everybody can get in there and look at it and so forth is going to cure these problems. I think that's some type of fantasia, some type of dream. Because I got an email last night. We had a 7 o'clock meeting. I got an email, it came into my box at 6:07 from Suzanne Corbett. It says open meeting law violation. And what it was is we had on the agenda last night at our 7 o'clock meeting, one of the topics was to look at a draft report that had to do with the Ashfield House. It said Ashfield House draft report. And it's a long, lengthy kind of email, but the guts of it is that she goes and she says, well, does it apply to this or does it apply to that? You didn't put enough detail into the agenda. Is it this? Is it, vivid imagination of what it could be. And what it was a draft report that the select board, the prior select board, asked the chairman of the finance committee to do to see if we had, what type of lien or presence, asset-wise, that we had invested in the Ashfield House today. So, how specific can these agendas be is kind of the question. I mean, if we were going to have the entire meeting put on an agenda, we need to have $12,000 for a much bigger bulletin board.
So can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Go ahead.
So that sort of question, sometimes there's a really clear answer, yes, no, and then the answer. Doesn't take a lot of time if you're well educated in some of these laws. Does the way the law works allow for documenting that sort of answer to somebody who's, legitimately asking a question about the open law rules? So are some of these things, I guess I'm asking, there are other
I'm only one member of the board.
Yeah.
You know, it could mean anything that you want it to be, I think, out in the real world. Okay? My feeling is that the agenda is to notify people that we're meeting,
Yeah.
and these are the topics we intend to take up. Okay? If you're interested in one of those topics, maybe you should be there. But people that aren't at the meeting send emails notifying us of an open meeting law violation. And they want to know what it's about. A good way for you to know when we're talking about something is to come to the meeting. We're here, we'd love to have some company. Okay? But these are the kinds of things, you know, they can detail you right to death, and that's what I'm finding in the short month that I've been here.
Just to follow up to that, you really should look at their actual complaints, because they're very, very detailed, and they take exception with many, many things. And you get a flavor going through these complaints, but you could judge them any way you want. But that's why it's very important you look at their complaints with their signatures on the bottom. And I would encourage anyone, we have a 3-ring binder in there currently. If Brian, 2 of them, one for public information requests, and another one for open meeting law complaint violations, and the public information. And if the select board agrees to do what Brian suggests, they'll be available on the web, and you can look at them, and you can go talk to your fellow citizens, or you can come back to us and say, you were really wrong. You know, you probably should have done something, but you make that judgment.
Cheers to the Schwartz, 305 Sears Road. Since there's been a series of complaints that were waiting to be adjudicated, does it ever happen that when the Attorney General or these parties find them to be not founded, that the people who file them are reminded that they're frivolous, and is there a way that they can do anything about that, or is it each time you just have to go through this process?
I was told
you know,
that
they see a pattern of
they're protected under the law. No one uses the word frivolous, because it's a fine line between what's frivolous and what's not frivolous. And as Don said, those are very real concerns by those people. So there is this thing called abuse of process, where people try to tie up the government, but it's very, very difficult to adjudicate. And so a lot of latitude is afforded under both the request for public information and under the complaints. It's supposed to promote transparency in government. At least it does at the municipal level. The state level, they run differently.
Tanner Rogers, 243 Graves Road. In answer to your question, yeah, it would be great if the people could come here and talk. I think Ron has a point there, though, that if they go to the AG and file a complaint, we have to go through this process. And because of our own legal counsel that we use, we have to get second opinions. So it costs more. If they would not start this process and just talk to us,
Exactly.
it would be great. It would save us money. It would save a lot of heartache and division between the town. But unfortunately, they're choosing to go this road, and this is what we have to do. Our hands are tied. But it's also fair. I think there's a pendulum that's swinging for the open meeting law. It's new because people in a small town talk. And now all of a sudden, because of what's happened in the past, we get in trouble to just do the neighborly thing. And now it's costing us money.
Discretion being the better part of valor, I think I'll pass.
That from Mary too.
I just wanted to say that we did start, when Doug was chair, maybe almost a year ago, asking regularly of both our own town council and the AG office, and also Secretary of State, if there was any mechanism, if you had repeat or things that went over the same, if there were any mechanisms at all, and there were not, but we did start looking into that a long time ago, pressing to be certain that there wasn't something that could be done.
I think a piece of good news, it actually came by way of email today from town clerk. I presume it was sent to you from the AG's office. And what they've put together is a couple of pages that actually have key points on them to have a cheat sheet sort of, so you look down and say, make sure you do this, 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 and this. So there are at least 3 of those, and they also put out a revision to their open meeting law guide, which is dated now in 2013. I haven't had a chance to read through all of it and see what improvements they may have made, but I think the 3 pages that give you something to look at, to advise you what to do, is helpful for all the boards and all the committees that need to follow the open meeting law.
Further discussion?
Nina Kohler, Bailey Road. This is just a comment, so maybe I shouldn't even make it, but it's making it, in my mind, difficult for people to want to volunteer in town. Who wants to take on a position like this if they're going to be constantly questioned and harassed, and when you're just trying to do the best you can and go to the open meeting seminars, you train yourself, you try the best you can, you don't talk outside of meetings, you don't even talk on email, nothing. You go to the meetings, you got your agenda, everything's by the book. Pretty boring, things don't get done as quickly, but it's the way we have to do it. But it's making it difficult for people who want to volunteer because it just becomes onerous.
Further discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor of the town voting to transfer up to $7,000 from free cash to an account, to the legal expense account, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to transfer up to $3,000 from free cash to special project staffing fund or act relative thereto. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $3,000 from free cash to the Special Project Staffing Fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second in the back. Select Board?
We've really already discussed this. This is money, so when people are drawn away from their regular work that they would normally be doing for the remainder of the year, they'll be able to draw on this account for their extra hours that are needed. Because we've tried to run this boat as tight as we can, and it's on limited hours, but with all this extra work, it takes extra time. So this gives us a fund, regardless of who's working on it, they can keep track of their hours and draw from this account. So all the work can get done.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends this.
Discussion.
Beverly Chow, Cummington Road. If I recall correctly, when I attended one of the open meeting law meetings, an attorney was it from Kaufman and Page, I may be wrong about that, but an attorney was leading this meeting, and the subject came up of all the hours and the work and digging back through records to supply in answer to the request by public. If I recall correctly, I'd be happy to be corrected, but my memory is the town is allowed to have the person making the request pay for the expense, which is also including the hours it takes to find these records by the least hourly rate of a qualified person to find those records. And that expense, if I recall correctly, the town is allowed to have the person making the request pay that amount.
Can anybody respond to that?
Yes, that's correct, Beverly. The difficulty, you can even request the money in advance of doing the work. So if someone gives you a request for information and you estimate that it's going to cost $500 to do it at a given rate, call it $12 an hour or something like that, then you can say, yes, we'd be glad to process your request, and we estimate it's going to cost this, and you need to pay that in advance. And if it's under that, we'll reimburse you, and if it's over, you owe us the money. The difficulty is you can't just pick a number out of the air for the estimate. And some of the requests that have come to the town have been requests on email, for email. And they might say, I would like to see all of the email records between the Health Board, the Select Board, and FERCOG over the course of the last year. Now, that becomes a difficult thing to estimate because some of that information might be private information, it needs to be redacted, you know, or you're not allowed to just copy it and send it. It takes time. So where we find ourselves in a very difficult position, typically, is coming up with the estimate. So you go through all of these emails and you say, I think these are them, I think these are them. And you've already spent countless hours just doing the estimate. And then they could say, no, thank you, I'm not interested in that. But you are right, there is a revenue side of this expense. It's just very difficult to get to it. And I would say, on the ones that I have seen personally, perhaps 50% of them don't ever go through. So you just spend the time creating the estimate, and you have a certain amount of time to respond to them, and then you've expended that effort, and you're never going to publish the information because they decide they don't want it.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that, I mean, you bring up a very good point, but we would probably frown, I know I would frown upon it if somebody came in with $500 and the employee was able to put the cash in their pocket. They still need to get paid through the same payroll system, and that $500 would go into the general fund and show up in free cash, or we'd probably find a place to spend it somewhere. So we still have to appropriate the money to pay the people to do their work, even though this revenue source would be coming around the backside.
Nina Fuller, and it's my understanding that that's only for information, requests for information. The open meeting law complaints, they don't give you money for that, and that takes time to respond to the complainant, to talk to the Attorney General, go back and forth and back and forth. These are all emails, letters. That takes time. It takes time away from the workday.
I suspect a lot that the people doing this know how expensive it is to put together estimates, because it has been many times at each of these three organizations that very complex requests have been made and then there have been no follow-up. I don't see these requests as frivolous, not at all. I more see them as malicious. When you look for minor violations or any violations, I think the equivalent would be being followed by a police car and written a summons every time you went 1 mile over the speed limit. They have the right to do that. But I believe in the case of the police, that would be an abuse of the process. I think this is an abuse of the process. I believe this is well coordinated and well directed, and it is aimed at disrupting these three organizations and causing them as much money and as trouble as possible. I think the $3,000 figure here is, as Mr. Carter said, very low. I think that's going to be eaten up very quickly. And I never did hear an answer to Doug Cranston's question, is how do you stop it? The only way that I know to stop it would be for some community pressure, or for these people to actually come out and say what's bothering them and maybe get an answer. assuming anything is bothering them other than their desire just to make trouble.
Jim Cutler, 421 Beldenville. I just think that, and again, I look at this as a disruptive kind of behavior. And I don't know the particulars, I don't know the numbers of requests and things like that. So I'm really speaking more of a sense that if there is a mechanism, and I just heard that there is one, that can be used for individuals who seem to have an interest in filing many of these. I'm not sure I understand why there isn't a simple procedure for not coming up with complex estimates of what they should put into an escrow, but just say, if you're after so many, you're going to put in X amount of dollars into escrow, just a flat fee, and then we'll figure it out once the process is figured out. I don't think that sounds too difficult, and I certainly think it would help to mitigate some of this repeat behavior. But that's just my opinion.
Further discussion?
That's a good point. I just think that would just generate more complaints because somebody who finds $10 on occasion, would find it onerous, and that would be a reason to complain. But I just went through my email quickly to give you an idea. And everybody's so excited about email because we can do all this communication. Well, it takes time, right? So in the last 2 weeks, on these types of issues that we were talking about here for the last hour and 10 minutes, I've had 16 emails in the last 2 weeks. Now, everyone that I got, Mary got, Ron got, Paulette, Ann got some of them, the board, 3 on the Board of Health had them, okay? Imagine the hours of people's lives that are being consumed on this. You read it, you think about it, you say, is there something I can do about it? Who is going to do something about it? It's huge. Yeah. It's huge, and it takes me back to my original argument is that in a town the size of Ashfield, everyone here should feel comfortable coming up to any of us on the street or coming and sitting before us at a meeting and making an appointment and saying, this is what we need, or ask a question, why did you make that decision? I mean, that certainly is a reason many of us live in Ashfield.
Here's Leah Schwartz. For the sake of discussion, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion so that we could charge the select board with looking at a fee structure to offset some of these costs. I'm in support of the motion, but I'm making that as an amendment. I don't want to give a specific amount, but maybe that will help remedy it.
So we have a form now. You want to come forward, or you want to bring it to you?
Oh, you have a form, okay.
I'll remind everybody while she's writing that next Tuesday, March 19th, you're all going to come back here for the town caucus so you can all volunteer to help solve these problems. And I'll be right up here then, too.
I grew up in
Okay. We have a motion to amend Article 3. The motion is moved that the town utilize the mandated state fee structure to help for the complainants to pay to help offset the cost to the town. For the complainants to pay to help offset the cost of the town. Is there a second to that motion for the amendment? Okay. So the amendment has been, a motion has been made and seconded, and we now will discuss the amendment.
Read it one more time, Phil, will you?
The amendment that the town utilize the mandated state fee structure for the complainants to pay to help offset the cost to the town. Got it? Okay. All right.
For the clarification, this was...
Name and address.
I did, my name and my address. And my question is, are people understanding there's only a fee structure for information? A public complaint, open meeting law does not have, as I understand it, said fee structure. Is that understood by the people bringing forth the motion, and I seconded it, and the general population?
I would be happy to have a friendly amendment to adjust the language so that, because I think we're in agreement.
I'm not sure that's necessary.
It's okay, I understand that, it's only for certain things.
It's my understanding that the town already is using that mechanism to charge people for the information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, in light of that, I'm arguing against the amendment since we're already doing it.
Well, but
Mary Ellen Abbott, 243 Washington Corner Road. But are we charging before information is gotten or after information is picked up?
You have to give a reasonable estimate. You can't just say, and I've asked the question specifically of the attorney of the day under the Secretary of State. You can't just say, I think that's $500. You have to make a fair assessment of what it's going to cost, which we do, and you can request that they pay in advance according to the lowest paid, reasonably suited person to do that. And we are doing all of that now, to my knowledge, are we? Okay. Okay.
Johnny Saros's Road, so I'm confused. So you're saying that we're already doing that for the, when people ask for information? Okay, so the people, so anytime someone asks you for some public information, you say it's going to cost X amount of dollars. Okay, so we don't need anything.
Correct. Maybe I wasn't clear in what I said before, but you have to make a reasonable assessment, and probably half to 3/4 of the time, the people choose not to get the information. But it takes a lot of hours to assess the estimate, okay? On the open meeting law side, I think that would be frowned upon because you are kind of deterring people and discriminating based on ability to pay and so on and so forth. So it really is a wide open meeting law complaint process for everybody.
Do you want to know?
What's that?
You had your hand up.
I just asked the question.
Jim Cutler, 21 Belleville. Is it your opinion that the fee structure is sufficient to cover not only the work that you're being asked to do, but the various time involved to even make the estimate? Or is even a fee structure inadequate based on what you feel you need to do to address this appropriately.
In the town, the official record keeper is the clerk. Beneath the clerk, you have the various boards. So the clerk can say that with the Conservation Commission, someone is the record keeper for the Concom, correct?
Right.
So what happens is the request will be parlayed over to someone else, a volunteer, someone who isn't paid to do it. They have to take time out of their day because they have to go through their records and make an assessment. Board of Health is very familiar with this process. In the case where it's select board business, that falls under Mary usually. And Mary is restricted to work 25 hours a week. So she has to take the time that she's working to do her job, which isn't, in my opinion, enough hours as it is. She's overwhelmed. And allow for 5 or 10 hours of handling something else. And half the time, we'll never get the revenue stream because the people say, no, thank you, we've decided we don't want the information.
I guess I'm just confused at the process. So you get, all right, here's an example. I send you an email and I say, I want to know, you know, how many people are on a health insurance and how long has this been going on? So you can't send me you have to put that request in for someone to get me all that information. Is that right? I mean, at that point, you say to me, well, that's going to cost you $20, Donna, and we can get that for you. Is that how it works? Or you assess, well, is this
I will just say we have sent out estimates for 500 pages, 300 pages, 800 pages. We have some stacks because in some cases you've had to pull and segregate even to get an idea. If I had tried to guess, I would have been off probably by magnitudes. So we do actually have large stacks that have not been paid for or claimed.
Okay, so what happens, so you don't pay until you get, so you say, okay, thank you, is the five.
Right, and where it's short, you can make an estimate and you do that, and then you don't.
Right, I see what you're saying.
But there are many that are very, very complex.
So with all these things that are
I'm curious, Mary, what percentage of these requests turn out to be they don't want them? Would you say?
I think somebody said about 50%, and that sounds about right to me. But there are some weeks where we have multiples. I am wary of giving anything definite because there isn't even time.
Do you get a reason why they ask for that and then don't want them?
No.
No. You just don't hear from them again.
Okay.
Just curious to know what happens.
Susan Clark Road. The Board of Health has gotten numerous records requests. And a point I want to make is we get requests for documents that we don't have that other agencies hold. We are not allowed to just refer the person to the other agency either. We have to go get that stuff from whatever agency is holding the record. So it's more complicated than just simply going into the files and pulling stuff out. Last summer I had a request that I spent 8 hours fulfilling, and it's still sitting in the office because the person who requested it didn't pick it up, and it's 500 pages.
So before I call on Mr. Carter, I want to remind you, we're discussing the amendment to request payment.
I'm getting so maybe I like email. So to show you what you tell me how complicated this is. This is an email that I received at 7:46 this evening. It says it's from Kachina Urian at the Ashfield house. It has a paragraph, opening paragraph. It says, in a separate matter, I recently reviewed select board minutes, or talking about select board minutes within the past 10 years that have to, you get requests that they want to come in. This one was coming in to actually look at the minutes, but What if you had a request saying that you wanted select board minutes from the last 10 years, all related to the Ashfield House? How much time would that take? And I mean, how long is it going to take for somebody to actually go out and sort through all the minutes from the last 10 years from the select board meeting that have to do with that? Somebody's going to have to sort through that instead of having, you know, you could be digging forever.
Well, you know, we do have a jobs crisis. People are weird. How many times have you spoke?
Once, just once, just made the motion, not even one. So I made this amendment in the spirit of trying to help the town to resolve some of this. I'm not sure, listening, I understood it exactly, and it's right, but I guess I'm asking other people perhaps to amend it or come up with a different amendment that would help the town. It seems that the gap is in the estimating, if I'm hearing this correctly, that it's in the estimating of this. Is there a way that we can charge for estimating? Is there a way that we can help our volunteer boards? Because Nina's point is very well taken. It seems like the pressure is on the volunteer boards. Are there any suggestions that would help make this motion help us help the town?
Let me read you the motion again. That the town utilize the mandated state fee structure for the complainants to pay to help offset the cost to the town. Ann?
In your Clay Road, and I know you didn't, you were using it as an example, but I just wanted to clarify it because Katrina actually had talked to me and said, I will come in, I will look at it, and I will see what I want. I don't want all of them. So there is a difference, you're right. It's not like somebody has to go and get all 10 years and copy that. All she was interested in was the particular ones that related to the issue she was addressing.
But
let's not go, no, let's not get into that, please. Thank you. Don?
Of the occasion, Don Robinson, Norton Hill, of the occasions where such estimates have been prepared, how many have then been paid for?
I have one for $157 for the past few months sitting in my office that has not been picked up, obviously, or paid for.
I'm sorry, you had one that was not picked up and paid for?
Correct.
And all the rest were picked up and paid for?
Some have been paid for. It's hard to come up with a figure so that 50-50 is maybe, but it's also a little difficult because some of it is town clerk, some of it is here, some of it is boards, and some of it is lacking time to do some of that analysis, frankly.
I think what we're concerned to know is whether this business of the fee structure, which is promising in some ways, has in fact produced any revenue for the town. Can you give us an order of magnitude estimate? Total money paid, fees paid.
I mean, less than $1,000 is the answer.
Less than $1,000?
Less than $1,000 come in there.
Janet Rogers, Graves Road. I have a question. If this money gets paid, where does that money go? General fund. She still has her 25 hours that she can only work. So there's still work not being done. Okay, so I'm not quite sure the point of this whole amendment when we're following the OML rules anyways, and we're spending how much time on it? It sucks. Sorry, lack of a better word, that we're spending this money on these legal expenses, but it's a necessity, and we just need to...
Remember, we're talking about the amendment.
I move the amendment.
Before you can move the amendment, thank you, I did call on Jim.
Yeah, just quickly, we did just vote on a $3,000 movement of, that's the vote we're working on.
We're currently working on an amendment to the $3,000 article.
That's right, my apologies. This money that we are about to vote on after we vote on the amendment is why we're talking about this amendment. We have to spend more money to pay people to do work that people like Mary can't do because she's caught up addressing these requests. So it seems to me that we're going to have to pay for this somehow because people don't have time to do it. Volunteers don't have time to do it. So it's going to happen. So we either try to figure out how to cover the costs, or we're going to just end up eating this constantly.
Further discussion on the amendment? Okay. We're going to vote on an amendment that the town utilize the mandated state fee structure for the complainants to pay to help offset the cost to the town. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
The amendment is defeated. Okay? Any question about the vote? Clear. Okay? We now go back to the main motion. First of all, cheers.
You keep this or throw this away?
Okay, we now go back to the main article. See if the town will vote to transfer up to $3,000 from free cash to special project staffing.
Mr. Moderator, point of order.
Okay?
I believe that amendment has to appear in the minutes. You have it?
That's what I write down.
That's why I asked. What do I do? She told me. Okay. Paulette?
I'm hoping it's not out of the line with what we're working on right now, but Tom and I may differ, but my fondest hope for the town, and my background is IT, is if all these minutes, let's take the select board, which are most all of them very nicely typed, were scanned into a server, computer, and in a way that they could be searched. And somebody did say, I would like over the last 10 years to know which minutes all cover topic X. They could be scanned and identified in very quick fashion. So longer term, I'm hoping that the town move a little bit in that direction so that we ease the burden on people and make technology work for us, which repetitively will do a task over and over and over again quickly and not use up as much staff time.
Further discussion?
We're not there.
Further discussion on Article 3? Ready to vote. All those in favor to see if the town will vote to transfer up to $3,000 from free cash to special project staffing fund, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
The motion carries by majority. Okay? Moving on. Article 4. To see if the town will vote to transfer up to $1,000 from building inspection to elections expense or act relative thereto. Mr. Fuller?
Mr. Moderator, we'd like to pass on this article, but in so doing, we have found that the reason that we don't need this article is because a lot of the poll takers for our elections have donated their time instead of getting paid for it. And the select board, and I'll let the finance committee speak for themselves, just would like to thank them for doing that and helping us out. So we'll pass on this.
The finance committee would like to echo that sentiment. We appreciate it very much. This is what makes Ashfield very special. We think the number of volunteers to a lot of these issues that we face.
Yin and yang. Article 5. To see if the town will vote to transfer up to $3,300 from building inspection to fire department grant match for the purpose of accepting a fire department forestry matching grant or act relative thereto. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer $3,300 from the building inspection to fire department grant match for the purpose of accepting the fire department forestry matching grant.
Is there a second?
Second.
And an explanation, please.
Yes. First off, this is a grant that the fire chief applied for in spring of 2012, and in most prior years, it was awarded in the fall, but this year it's running a little late, so we're in the spring. It's a 50-50 matching grant. So we will spend, if we vote to accept this, the full amount at this time, and half will be reimbursed to the town. The items that they intend to use this for is a floating pump that it says works in places where ground-based pumps will not work, and it's good for wood locations, brush fires, that type. And also for an equipment trailer that can be pulled behind an ATV to help transfer equipment in the woods.
Finance Committee.
Oh, rules moderator. The Finance Committee recommends unanimously in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Discussion.
Our enthusiasm was so
Questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries by a majority. Article 6. To see if the town will vote to transfer up to $4,500 from building inspection to tree warden expenses or act relative thereto. Is there a motion?
There is.
Mr. Holt.
I move that the town transfer $4,500 from the building inspection line item to the tree warden expense.
Is there a second?
Second.
And speaking out on this, the budget has, in the past, there's $150 left, remaining balance. And I want to tell you that since fiscal year 09 and 010, we had allocated $7,500 to this budget. Since then, it was $4,000. And under Chapter 87 of this state, which is a shade tree chapter, the tree warden is responsible for the trees in the public way. And so that I could speak about this, I drove a bunch of the ways with Tom Poisson, a tree warden, and fortunately we have a lot of beautiful trees, but they're all about the same age. And we drove all over town, including places like Norton Hill and Steady Lane and just a Main Street and so on and so forth. And I work with wood a lot at home, and I know what it takes to handle trees and so on and so forth. And as I said to the select board yesterday, there's probably 10 times that amount out there that needs to be culled out of our trees. They're a problem, and they're a liability. They're beautiful, but there's some real issues with them. I asked questions of Tom, like, do you work with the utility purveyors to try to get them to do as much of it as possible? And he says, absolutely. Basically, this $4,500 would allow for 3 days of a tree working company who has a lift truck. You need a lift truck. We can't just send our DPW guys out there with chainsaws and have them do it. Occasionally they do push a tree out of the way for us and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of trees that need attention. And when I saw them with my own eyes, I had a sore neck by the time I was done driving around for an hour and so on and so forth. I wholeheartedly recommend this and support it.
Finance Committee.
We discussed this at length. We are in agreement that the article should pass. The vote was unanimous.
Discussion.
Alan Lilly, watching Spruce Corner, Bug Hill. I just hope you didn't mention Bug Hill. I was hoping you would. We got 25 of them that are all dead that need some work.
Just to respond real quick, there's no way we're going to get to all the trees in the town at this amount. We have to allocate a lot more money. But these 3 days, what he says he tries to do is he works with the utility purveyors. They'll go down the street, they'll say, this is yours, these are ours, and we try to deal with groups of trees so that these tree companies can come in on a given day and work with 2 or 3 trees all at once. He has again come to us with a budget for next year, and we haven't deliberated on that fully yet, but more you push back on this and say 4,000 or 2,000, liability's still out there, and it's just growing every year, so.
One of the purveyors that comes to work with Tom also donates a whole day worth of work free to the town as a part of Arbor Day. And last year he spent a whole day, I believe, at the park.
Woody Renew.
And this is Super Renew. And he also offered to get to do the same again this year. So this gentleman earns his money.
Further discussion? Jim?
Jim Cutler, 421 Bellingham. What happens to the wood?
I asked him that question, and he said that oftentimes they give the opportunity to the abutters if they want it. There used to be more demand than there is now. These trees are big trees, and the reason that they're working the trees is because they're past their maturity, and a lot of them aren't quality calories, maybe. You know, they're kind of rotten inside and so on and so forth. But they do give a lot of leeway to the abutters of those trees.
Further discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor of the town voting to transfer up to $4,500 from building inspection to tree warden expenses, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Passes by majority. I guess I failed to ask if anybody wanted to abstain from any of these votes. Okay. I'll get an email tomorrow.
Open meeting law violation.
I'm not reading email tonight. Article 7, and the last article. Thanks for hanging in there. To see if the town will vote to transfer up to $6,700 from available funds as follows. $1,791 from police vehicle fiscal year 12, $909 from police department fuel, $4,000 from tax title expenses to police department expense or act relative thereto. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Martin.
I move the town transfer $6,700 from available funds as follows. $1,791 from police vehicle fiscal year 12, $909 from police department fuel, $4,000 from tax title expenses to police department expense.
Second. Thank you. Explanation?
Yes. At this moment, the police department expenses account is 87% expended. At this time of year should be around 67%. And so we know that it is not going to have enough money to get to the end of the year. There were some items that came up in the fall. Hurricane, and we've had additional snowstorms which cause extra additional hours. There are certain items the town has been involved with over the years but are considered private events like Fall Festival, and it came to our attention last year, September, and the select board at the time indicated to the chief that the additional hours that were needed to cover that we would deal with in the spring, so here we are. And there were more than one sexual assault investigations which used a considerable amount of time and also necessitated the town bring in an additional officer from another town, and the select board had approved that expense as well.
Finance committee.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends this article, but not unanimously. It was 2 for the approval, 0 against, and 1 abstain.
So, does somebody want to speak for, or somebody want to speak against the finance committee?
There are no votes against the motion.
No, none against. One
Oh, just an abstain. I'm sorry.
There was only 3.
I'm misreading this. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want some explanation of that vote?
Like.
I think the concern was around the degree to which this appeared to be a set of expenditures that exceeded what was budgeted, some of which seemed particularly apt and appropriate given uncertainty in all of budgeting, And some of these were bearing upon very critical police matters, such as some of the investigations which required more staffing than was anticipated and so forth. There were some expenditures, however, which we were concerned about within the Finance Committee as representing more discretionary-like expenditures, which we were a little troubled about because we feel that there needs to be a fuller discussion about kind of what the priorities are and the importance of managing within a budget. This has come up in other places. This is not uniquely police department, but we have seen in the past that when budgets get set, we recognize they're not ironclad, but at the same time, we're very cautious about any tendency for people to kind of go beyond the budget without adequate reflection upon what really is most important in priorities. So I think that reflects some of the softness, if you will, of support. But we do, on balance, recommend approval of this because we think these are expenditures which have been made and we should pay for.
Discussion. Well said. No discussion? Mr. Cranston.
This, Doug Cranston, 326. This does not pertain to this particular article, but I do want to thank you for allowing open discussion as much as we had on all these other articles.
Ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Hold on, television's on at 9 o'clock. All those in favor of the town voting to transfer up to $6,700 from available funds as follows: $1,791 from police vehicle fiscal year 12, $909 from police department fuel, $4,000 from tax title expenses to police department expense, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
The motion carries by majority.
Abstain?
Any abstentions?
Not voting.
One abstention. Thank you. Thank you. That's what it does. Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Don't move.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just for 1 second. Hold it. Hold it.
Public service announcement.
Please.
1 minute. I went to the Emergency Management Association meeting last Wednesday night, and Tom brought up the money for Hurricane Irene, the 25%. They have no idea when we're going to get any money if we give it. So that is something we got to do.
Nice. Thank you all for coming and your great
They're all priority mail?
I don't know.
Hi, I just thought I'd tell you the talk about him. First he was bummed out, there's no way we could get the story. But he said, if I wanted to come Saturday,
We all.
Charles, killing me, I'm sorry, he's done. But maybe I could back it up with a phone call to him. Somewhere down south. Yeah, first Adam was just mad.